You are watching the Target 4.4 retest film, which is translating quadratic equations from standard into factored in vertex forms. So we're going to start out with a GCF factoring problem, and that is taking out the biggest number and the amount of letters that you can from each of these terms. So if you notice, this is 3b squared, this is 30b. So the question you need to ask yourself is, what is the biggest number that you can take out of 3 and 30? You see that the biggest number that you can divide into each of those is a 3. And then this is b squared, which is b times b, and this is 1b. So how many b's can you take out of each one, or what can you divide by each of those, and that is b. And then when you do the division, 3 divided by 3 is 1, b squared divided by b is b, 30 divided by 3 is 10, and b divided by b is 1. So we're left with this. If you think of it in terms of a box, we have 3b squared and negative 30b, and that 3b would have to go here, and b and negative 10 would go here. Those would be the factors that multiply to be 3b squared minus 30b. So let's go on to normal trinomials. These were the ones where we figured out what are the two numbers that multiply to be positive 2 and add to be negative 3. And then we're going to put them in bundles. So two numbers that multiply to be 2 and add to be negative 3. See, all the numbers that multiply to be 2 are 1 and 2, negative 1 and negative 2. And the ones that add to be negative 3 are those. So it's x minus 1 and x minus 2. Here's another one. The factor list for 60 is much bigger, but it's still two numbers that multiply to be negative 60 and add to be negative 4. So if you can't think of those numbers right away, then you start writing them. And this negative 4 tells you that the bigger one has to be negative. So I'm going to start by writing down all the factor pairs. And when I get to one that I think is pretty close, I'm going to stop. So 5 goes into there negative 12 times, 6 goes into there negative 10 times, and there it is. So the answer is, in factored form, b plus 6, b minus 10. All right, skipping down to number 13, one thing that you should check for if the letter or the number in front of b squared is not 1 is, can that number be divided into all three parts? And in this case, it can. It won't always be that case, and we'll do some problems that are like that. In fact, 9 and 11 are like that. But in this case, you can. So we're going to divide by 3, end up with b squared plus 5b plus 4. And then it's the same thing you were just doing. Two numbers that multiply to be 4 and add to be 5. All the numbers that multiply to be 4, and the one that adds to be 5 is 1 and 4. So our factor bundles are b plus 1 and b plus 4. But don't forget that 3 that you divided to begin with. Here's another weird case. Notice that there is no b term. There's no term in the middle. So the question is, two numbers that multiply to be negative 25, but add to be 0. You can see that those numbers would be 5 and negative 5. There you have it. Feel free to rewind that, listen to the words again. Now we'll go into ones where a is 1. So the way we did this in class was we drew a box, put 3b squared in this place, and negative 3 in this place. And now we needed to figure out what goes in those two that adds to be the negative 8. Okay, so the trick to help you figuring that out is multiplying 3 and negative 3, and that's the number you're wondering if it multiplies to be that number, and then adds to be negative 8. So think of all the numbers that multiply to be negative 9 and add to be negative 8. I can write those down. And the ones that add to be negative 8 are those. So that's how we're going to split up the negative 8b. Okay, once you do that, now we can find the outside of the boxes, which ends up being your parentheses. So 3 goes into 3 and negative 9, and v goes into both of those. 3 goes into 3 one time, v goes into v squared, v times, 3 goes into negative 9 negative 3 times, and v goes into v once. And then the only numbers that they have in common on the bottom row are 1. 1 goes into 1v times. 1 goes into negative 3 times. So the check says that we're right. Therefore, our bundles are 3v plus 1 and v minus 3. Okay, feel free to rewind and listen to that again. But let's do number 11. Again, we'll draw the box. This one is 3r squared and negative 4 here. And we just need to figure out what goes in those two. The easiest way to figure those out is multiply those two numbers. That's the number that it's multiplied to be. It still adds to be 4. So I think of all the numbers that multiply to be negative 12 and add to be positive 4. Negative 1 times 12. Negative 2 times 6. Negative 3 times 4. The one that works is negative 2 and 6. And that's how we split up the middle term. Okay, let's do our GCFs then. 3r squared and 6r. Take a 3 out of both of those and an r. We're left with r and 2. In the bottom, I can take out a negative 2, and we're left also with r and 2. So therefore, our bundles are 3r minus 2 and r plus 2. Again, feel free to rewind. Listen to that again and again. We'll do one more kind of problem here. It's number 27. It says that we want to write this in standard form. Unfortunately, there's no easy way to get it to standard form. Can't go right to standard form. We have to go through another form. The easiest form to go to is vertex form. So let's find that vertex. 1, negative 4. And the a value, remember, is the slope from the first point to the second point, from the vertex to that next point. And that's 1, positive, because it's going up. So our vertex form is 1x minus 1. Remember, that's the opposite. And then the same would give me negative 4. Now to get to standard form, we use the box. X squared, negative 1x, and positive 1. So I have x squared. Combine those two right away, minus 2x plus 1. And now we need to do these two pieces. So multiply by 1. And then subtract 4. And there you have standard form. So go through vertex form first, then use the boxes to multiply. And don't forget those outside pieces. That seems to be the biggest mistake that I see. These pieces right here. All right, feel free and rewind and listen to that again. Watch it. Make sure you take notes. Go see your teacher if you need more help, but complete the packet in order to retest.